Stephen Brunt joins us now from our Sportsnet studios in Toronto. Now, Stephen, in the past, you've called being head coach of the Montreal Canadiens the toughest job in sports, and I can't argue with you there. The team has had 6 different head coaches in the last 10 years. What makes this job so difficult?
Well, there's a bunch of different elements. Number one is you're working in a market where hockey is a 24-hour obsession, 365 days a year, where there are talk shows all the time, where there's a constant conversation about one team and it's your team. So that's part of it. Number two, you're working against history, the glorious history of the Montreal Canadiens. However distant some of that might be, you're still being compared to dynasties of the past and great teams of the past and at times when the Canadiens were the dominant team in hockey, which it's a different world now. It's a different business now. That doesn't matter. You're still being compared to Scotty Bowman and teams with Maurice Richard and all of that. And the big one, the big one from a coaching perspective is with all of that attention, and especially all of that media attention, it's language. That you have to be able to operate in both languages fluently. Not many people can do that and coach a hockey team and win.
I guess you're saying, I'm part of the Montreal media, so I'm part of the problem, obviously, and I'm fine with that. But I guess, having any type of private life, must be impossible as head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. What kind of person do you have to be to succeed as the head coach of a Canadiens team?
Well, you have to have a lot of confidence. You have to be very confident in your own abilities. You have to be very confident in your ability to go out and to give the message every day, to tell the story every day, to deal with wins and losses in front of that press pack. You have to be willing to live in a goldfish bowl. If you coach a hockey team, if you're Barry Trotz coaching in Nashville, you can probably go out and have dinner and no one's going to bother you. But that's not the case for anybody who coaches the Montreal Canadiens. You're going to be in the spotlight. Everybody's going to know who you are. So you have to be kind of oblivious to that or embrace that. Ideally, you have to be awfully good at your job, the hockey part of your job.
Speaking of embracing the pressure, which Canadiens coach do you think was the best at handling this pressure of the media?
Of the guys I dealt with directly, so I never dealt with Scotty Bowman when he was in Montreal. I certainly dealt with him later. So I wasn't there to see how Scotty handled it, but I think he handled it pretty well. He also was very successful. But of the guys I personally dealt with, no one handled it better than Jacques Demers, who's a guy with a lot of natural charm. He's a funny guy. He's a very likable guy. But you know what the most important part of all that was? He won. He won. So you can be as likable and charming and funny and versatile in 2 languages as you want to be, but it sure helps if you can win a Stanley Cup.
Still a great guy to see around the city, very charming to this day. If coaching the Canadiens, though, I want to ask you, Stephen, is the toughest job in sports, what's the second toughest coaching position?
I don't know that there's an equivalent with the kind of, especially when you talk about the linguistic stuff. There's not that kind of an equivalent. But in terms of pressure, managing the New York Yankees is pretty tough, although it's easier now in the post-George Steinbrenner era than it was when Steinbrenner was running the team. There are places where coaching football, especially college in the United States, can be a real pressure cooker. But I'll tell you, the one that I think of now internationally, ask David Moyes what it's like to run Manchester United in the wake of Alex Ferguson and with the legacy of all those titles, all those championships, all that success. I think that's probably the toughest job globally in sport right now.
Stephen, thanks for your insight on this. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Wilder.